All right, I think we're going to get started. My name is Kif Scheuer. I'm the Climate Change Program Director at the Local Government Commission, which means that I have the honor of overseeing the CivicSpark program, for which we're here to celebrate the completion of our first ever service year, 11 months under our belts. I want to welcome you all to our graduation celebration, particularly our guests. And today you're going to hear a little bit about what we've been doing with CivicSpark. You're going to hear from our Executive Director, Kate Meese. You're going to hear from Holly Roberson from the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and some keynote comments from Secretary Laird from the Department of Natural Resources. So I just want to take a few moments to say some thank yous, because there's a lot of folks out there who really helped make this possible. First of all, I want to thank the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. Ken Alex and Michael McCormick, who literally rolled in today for this, helped get this off the ground, and it's been a phenomenal pleasure to work with you. Holly Roberson has been an amazing stalwart and a force of support throughout the administration and throughout the state this past year. Karen Baker's team at California Volunteers has been great to work with from the beginning, helping us conceptualize the program and working forward to make sure that we are running it well, and it's been great, and we look forward to keeping working with her. Our own staff, of course, at the Local Government Commission behind the scenes has been phenomenal to work with. They've put up with a lot in terms of taking this all on. It was a big growth opportunity for LGC and a really exciting experience, and everybody did a really great job. But particularly I want to call out Kristen Wraith, Jenny Woods, Julia, Kim, Ting Ting Eo, Janie and Maria, our accounting staff. I gave them a lot of gray hairs this past year. So really, really phenomenal support from everybody inside the office. And then our 9 regional partners who worked with us. I think we have one here today, Larry Green. There you go. Speaking for all 9 regional partners, you guys were amazing to get behind the program from the outset. Our dozens of project partners, and I see Chris Granger's here. Raise your hand, Chris. With the Cool Davis Foundation. I think she may be one of the few project partners here, but we've got dozens of them across the state, and we are grateful for their support. And of course, the local governments that we served, almost 90 local governments that we worked with. They're the mission of this program, but they really were also our partners in this program, and we're grateful for that opportunity. And then I just want to say my deepest thanks for last to our regional supervisors. If you could all stand up, those of you who are here. Come on. These guys were amazing. Where's Don? So Barb, Don, Julie, Larry, Ken, Jenny, and those who couldn't be here, Susan and Rob even, who left us a little bit early, they just really made this happen. They were on the ground in the field with very little guidance from us. And they did an amazing job and kept it together for the CivicSpark members, who we are, of course, here to recognize. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our Executive Director, Kate Meese.
Thanks all for being here. It's exciting to be at this moment. Definitely been looking forward to this for a long time. So I'm glad to be a part of this and to have you all here. So in thinking about preparing for this graduation, I've been thinking about the development and the evolution of the program, and thinking back to 3 years ago when we first started these conversations and thinking about the growing environmental requirements on local governments at a time when there wasn't necessarily additional resources to address those requirements. And for our members at the Local Government Commission, our members were supportive of the additional requirements and wanting to take more action on climate change, but coming out of a recession didn't necessarily have the employees to do it, didn't have all the tools that they used to have to do it. So we really started to come around the need to develop a capacity building program for local governments. And working with the Governor's Office of Planning and Research and California Volunteers, we had the opportunity to have a year-long planning grant where we went across the state. We had 9 meetings from San Diego to the North Coast, and we asked local governments, what do you need? What's really going to make a difference in your ability to respond to climate change? And what do you think the first thing they said was? Money. They needed money, but we didn't have money. But we did have resources. So staff capacity was definitely the second thing. And so over the next year, we developed the CivicSpark program, working closely with the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and we're able to provide some of that capacity through this program. And it's been just amazing to see in the last 11 months how much you guys have really stepped in to be able to address that critical need and to help advance some of those climate policies. And especially given that you guys had the extra responsibility of also representing and growing the visibility of the program as you were serving. So I definitely want to give you, extra credit and acknowledgement for that fact that you were learning as we were growing. And I want to highlight some of the achievements that you guys have done because it's really significant. And I think the fact that you guys are walking away having made long and lasting impacts individually in your communities, plus collectively you've made significant statewide impacts. And so that's not something to take lightly, especially in 11 months of service. In the last 11 months, you've collectively provided over 60,000 hours of service, working directly to support local government climate initiatives. That's huge. I mean, that is... If you think about the cost that would be for a local government to hire out a consultant or to have staff to be able to do that in a time when that was not a potential, that's huge. And as Kif said, you have supported almost 100 jurisdictions throughout California. Jurisdictions who I've heard time and time again say, I would not be implementing my climate action plan if I didn't have CivicSpark. So these are actions that would not have happened otherwise. You've worked on over 37 projects, and you've helped local governments in everything from planning around climate change and assessing risks with 8 climate and energy action plans, 8 greenhouse gas inventories, 10 vulnerability assessments, 4 energy benchmark studies. You've looked at how to bring community members into the process. So this is about local government capacity building, but we know the community members have to be partners. And you guys have brought in over and directly engaged over 1,000 community members, residents, businesses, and brought them into this process. And that's what's going to make this sustainable. So that's a huge thing that you guys have been able to benefit the communities around. And you've implemented initiatives to increase renewable energy, to increase energy conservation, clean fuel use, to increase active transportation and public transportation use, and to look at the impacts of sea level rise and extreme heat. So, I mean, these are no small tasks that you guys have taken on. And I want to kind of have a little field trip through the state to highlight a project in each of the region that I think speaks to how much you guys have been able to accomplish. So starting with the North Coast team, your work on alternative fuels has been really amazing. And the school curriculum you guys did, the local curriculum to look at climate change impacts, which was featured on a local radio show. You guys had a great story about that. The Sierras helped to implement 7 energy action plans. And this is, it's a conservative part of the state, and you're bringing in people to really tackle climate change impacts and energy strategies head on. The Sacramento team developed a vulnerability assessment for SACOG, for the Regional Council of Governments, which was adopted into their sustainable community strategy. This is a big deal. This has never happened. So this is the first region to really look at adaptation through their sustainable community strategy, thanks to CivicSpark. This wouldn't have happened without this program. The San Francisco Bay Area is looking at a resilient shorelines initiative, so another great model of how to deal with sea level rise. The San Joaquin Valley team is looking at extreme heat and addressing extreme heat through urban greening and through energy efficiency upgrades. The Central Coast team worked to help streamline solar permitting, and I know they did a lot of great community outreach on energy efficiency measures that was very well received there. The San Gabriel Valley team developed an energy assessment program. They saw it in the climate action plan and they said, I see your plan refers to this energy assessment program. And they helped them build the assessment program for residents and commercial, so homes and businesses. The San Diego region had an iCommute program that was very successful. So they went out and did outreach to homeowners, to multifamily apartment buildings, and gave them information about the transit and alternative transportation options in their region. They went back and said, how many people changed the way that they commuted? 28% changed the way they commuted, and some 52% said they would. So, I mean, these are real impacts in a very short time, so it's very impressive. And it's nice to be able to talk about all these impressive results after a really tough week last week on climate change. We had some battles at the legislature, and some of us were I would say all of us were very disappointed that we weren't able to be as ambitious as the governor wanted to be. And we saw the world watching that. We saw news articles in BBC about California backsliding on climate change. And so it's very nice on the news of the wave of that news to be here and to be able to celebrate local successes, because that's where the change is going to happen first. And we know that in these communities, that's how I am continue to be inspired and continue to be passionate about working on climate change, because in local communities, we know there is leadership. We know that people are acting now, and you all are acting now, and you all are a hope for future generations. Just seeing your passion, your ingenuity, and the experience that you guys are developing through this program, but also bringing in the level of education, the studies you guys are doing on the environment. It's just very, very impressive. So as the governor emphasized, we need determination now more than ever, and we need to collectively work together to move forward to advance these initiatives that we know are critical for our state. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your service. All of you have made a tremendous amount of impact already, and I just can't wait to see the amazing things you guys go on to achieve. So thank you. And with that, I want to turn it over to Holly, who, as Kip mentioned, has been a great champion of the program and a huge asset to have with the CivicSpark program. So with that, I'll turn it over to Holly.
Hi, everybody. You look great. I'm going to start with a quote from Governor Brown, and then I'm going to speak to you from my heart. So when this program was started, Governor Brown said, "Climate change is a global challenge that requires strong, sustained local action. This program gets young people into communities across California to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and boost energy efficiency." How many people feel that you've done just that? Yeah, you have. So I'm very grateful to have been able to work with the Local Government Commission and their team, especially Kip Scheuer, who has been tireless in working for you all behind the scenes. So thank you for your leadership. And we at the local, I'm not with the Local Government Commission. Sometimes it feels like that, but they can tell you by how often I call them. No, we at the Governor's Office of Planning and Research are really proud of the CivicSpark program. I talk about it everywhere I go. My colleagues talk about it everywhere they go. You are our foot soldiers. So when this program started, my colleague, Michael McCormick, who's here today, he's a senior planner at OPR, sat down with Karen Baker, who's the head of California Volunteers, and they wanted to design a program that would meet the needs of local government to help cities take action on climate change. So what's really special about this program, as Kate mentioned, is it goes from the bottom up, not the top down. And so we have learned from your efforts what makes climate change policy effective at the local level. And we, at the state level, will be more effective policymakers as a result of your efforts. So throughout this year, I've had the honor of meeting with many of you members around the state. And not only does it inspire me in my own work, but I have heard universally from the Encore members that they each have the best regional program. And whenever I talk with the local governments, they tell me, well, the program's great, but we really need 10 people next year. And I think Kip's going to work on that for you guys. So you've made a big impact, and you've not only paved the way for future CivicSpark members, but you've also paved the way for future programs like this. You may not know, but Michael McCormick spent the last year in DC, which is why I had the honor of stepping up to work on this program with the Local Government Commission. And we're pleased to announce, if you don't already know, that the American Resiliency Initiative, Resiliency Corps, is starting off on a national level with 10 members this year and will grow to possibly up to 200 members next year. So you are early adopters here in California, and we are once again showing that California is a laboratory and a successful laboratory for climate change. So your extensive work, which Kate described in detail and I won't repeat here, really is invaluable to the climate change fight. And as you transition from climate fellows today to climate leaders tomorrow, I'm really looking forward to seeing the positive change that each and every one of you are going to enact in California and globally. So thank you for your service. And it's now my privilege to introduce John Laird, who's Secretary of the California Natural Resources Agency and a distinguished member of our own Strategic Growth Council. We asked Secretary Laird to be our keynote speaker here today, mainly because in reviewing his bio, I noticed that as a graduate from UC Santa Cruz in 1970s with honors and somebody who wrote his thesis in water management, had CivicSpark existed, he would have been an excellent candidate for the program. And now that you have had your distinguished career, over 30, dare I say, possibly 40 years in public service, I look out at our members and I wonder if one of them may be working for you or working at the agency in the future. So John Laird, let me tell you a little bit about him. He began his career in public service at UC in Santa Cruz, on the Santa Cruz City Council, and he was mayor of the city for 2 years. While mayor, Secretary Laird focused on local transit, water planning, and work with regional government. So do any of these issues sound familiar? Yes. And as an assemblyman, he authored over 82 bills that were signed into law during his term of service before, unfortunately, he termed out, including laws to create the landmark Sierra Nevada Conservancy, we work in the Sierra Nevada region, and significantly expand water conservation, which CivicSpark may be working on in the future. So you're a good fit, very good fit for the program. Here at the Natural Resources Agency, Secretary Laird has made climate change adaptation one of his top priorities. He's a rare leader on environmental issues who stays connected to the local and the regional level as we work to implement statewide and even global policy change. Secretary Laird is often the first to ask, in rooms like this, that's great, but how is this going to work on the ground? So please join me in welcoming to the podium Secretary John Laird.
And actually, to take it a step further, it's not which one of you might work for the agency at some point. Which one of you is a future secretary? Because I am convinced there's somebody that is out here where that's going to happen. And it is an honor to speak at this graduation today because it really signifies so many different things. For you individually, it's your work. And in case it wasn't clear to you, there were 5 applicants for every seat that was filled in this program. You had to cross a hurdle and be the cream of the cream just to do this. And then you got, as was mentioned, you did 60,000 hours of service with having engaged over 1,000 people. Fundamental difference you made. And I was talking to some people about the projects they did, and this is exactly what makes a difference, what's going to happen with the issue of our time. This is the issue of our time. And I think I should comment on the thought that maybe there was a step back last week. Well, you know, it's worse than what you said. My biography said over 30 years of service, and somebody added it up, and when I was introduced, they said, this adds up to a lot more. And they corrected my biography in an introduction. And from that length of just activity, you always have 2 steps forward or 1 step back. You always have to regenerate the argument or the force behind your argument. And I think, just one random thought, I was a teenager when the Civil Rights Law was signed into law. And I was naive. I hadn't done some of the things I've done since then. I thought, oh, great, thank God we're done with that. And you have to constantly regenerate the energy. You have to constantly explain it to people. There's a new generation that didn't experience the same things, that didn't know. And so it is always a fight, and it is always steps forward and steps back, but as long as you keep going. And I was in the legislature when we adopted AB 32, and it was put on the list of what was known as a job killer bill. And so here, being argued that this is a job killer bill, so that's when it's fun. That's when you have the power of the bully pulpit. I stood up on the floor and said, oh, the shutdown of the planet's entire climate is not a job killer. That's the choice here. And that was the one job killer bill that year that passed and was signed into law, and rightfully so. And the thing is that the governor has set out 5 goals. He has been really clear. And yes, one of them might have been taken out of the bill, but we're moving ahead on all 5. We're going to make a difference on all 5. We are going to achieve all 5, and each one has a path. California led the way on tailpipe emissions, and it's just a question of how we go the next step. California led the way on AB 32 and lowering our emissions to where they were in 1990, and we're on track to do that. And then we have to do the next. We led the way on the renewable portfolio. The governor signed into law 33%. We're at 25. We're going to meet 33% by 2020. So we're on a path. We're just setting the next goal past that. Energy efficiency. He did that when he was governor the first time. And as a result, California energy use has basically been flat for 40 years. So while it's soaring in the rest of the country, we've just gotten more and more efficient. And what he is saying is we have to be even more efficient. And for the first time, he's bringing in natural lands. And I talked to somebody that was working on forestry issues. Well, we have to lead the way. We're doing a forest carbon study next year, an economic alternative study on it. How do we make sure it's truly a carbon sink? And these horrible fires that are going on right now. The Rim fire 2 years ago had enough emissions from that fire to equal the emissions of 1.2 million cars in a year. So working on fire prevention and fire suppression is a climate change issue, and that's the one path that hasn't been as clear as the other 4, but we are marching down them. And I think the important thing, and it came up, well, first, the great thing that you don't realize because you're at the beginning of your career is that you just made a lot of friends, and a bunch of them are going to circle back at different times in your career. And you never plan for that. Because of all things, in 1982, then Governor Brown appointed me as a city council member at the time to what was known as the California SolarCal Local Government Commission on Energy and Renewable Resources. And when the next governor didn't like that commission, we spun off and became a nonprofit and renamed ourselves the Local Government Commission. And that is the birth of the Local Government Commission that is overseeing all this. And at the time, there were many less people involved, but it was council members, supervisors, mayors from around the state, and we had to play the hand we were dealt, which is a message to you. You play the hand you're dealt. Well, we didn't have curbside recycling. So in Santa Cruz, where I was on the council, we were just one of the first in the state to have curbside recycling. And then through the Local Government Commission, we let other people know how they could do the same thing. We won a landmark federal case to win the right to zone for greenbelts around our city and preserve the greenbelts so that we would have open space and urban development in a mix that was appropriate. We went to the voters and they voted a 50-cent sales tax for transit only so that we would have public transit. And we were constantly moving ahead on these issues because those were the issues of the time. And the interesting thing is we all considered ourselves these young, brash elected officials that might be outsiders and who knew where we might end up. Well, then the mayor of Rialto, who I met in the local government commission, turned out to be my seatmate my first term in the assembly. The mayor of Berkeley, who I did a lot of things with, served the same 6 years in the assembly with me. The mayor of Davis at the time, where we did all this stuff together, turned out to be in the governor's office when I arrived in the legislature. There were just different ways it cycled through, and you never think of that. It's when I went to my first office in the assembly, there was this guy that I went to college with at the copier machine in the hallway. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "Oh, I'm the chief consultant for Senate Transportation." And so I got a lot of stuff done on transportation. And you just forget. It's always the reason you should always treat somebody the way you'd like to be treated, because you will be cycling through with them the rest of your career. And so the other piece of that is that as somebody that's probably a lot closer to the end of my career than the beginning, you look back and you ask the question, did you make the world a better place? And there's some things, and I don't think we knew we were doing it at the time. I mean, the Greenbelt thing for the city was great, but there's a bridge that opened a park and an arroyo in Santa Cruz that wouldn't exist without me being there. There were a whole group of us that organized for the largest national marine sanctuary on the West Coast, and organized against oil drilling in it, and organized later to have marine protected areas there, which now I administer, organized for Marine Management Act that says you look at it as an ecosystem, not by individual species. And then 2 weeks ago, PBS and BBC do Big Blue Live to feature why the Monterey Bay has more species and is better shape than anywhere. And it's the product of 30 or 40 or 50 years of grassroots organizing, of people making a difference. It's one of the things I did along the way when I was graduating. We'd never heard of HIV or AIDS. And when I turned off the city council, I ended up running our AIDS service agency for 3 years at the height of the epidemic, before there was a drug cocktail, because we had to make a difference. We had 600 regular volunteers, and all these things moved it ahead. And you just look at all of that, and the Sierra Conservancy was mentioned, my legacy bill in the legislature. I'm really proud of that. And now it's the Conservancy that is focusing local issues on forest health, on wetlands restoration in the Sierra, on land acquisition, in certain things, basic climate change issues. So while there might have been a little blip last week, this is a 40-year long haul, and you're at the beginning. And when I first went to work for local government, before I was even elected, they had a program called CETA, and it was a way that people could do internships temporarily and be trained in jobs in local government. And the drought of 1975-77, we had an 80-member seated drought team that went to every door in the county and made sure they had a brick for their toilet, a low-flow shower thing, knew exactly what they could do for conservation. And now, amazingly, there are people that came into local government as CETA employees that unfortunately are retiring and have spent 30 or 35 years in exactly those fields, building on it, making a fundamental difference. And that's what you're about to do. So I think I'm here today to say you're working on the governor's #1 priority. You're working on the #1 issue of our time. The thing that is going to make a difference is not just somebody that's in a leadership role that is saying we need to do this. It is people on the ground putting programs in place, changing minds one by one, so that nobody can ignore that the next time there's a vote like the one we had last week. And so, you know, when I ran for the city council the first time 34 years ago, I'd go to some of these candidates' forums, and everybody would be nuts, they'd be yelling, there'd be the stuff, and I would go out and walk a precinct. It was the best thing to just go talk to 200 people. And I ended up being the top vote getter. Nobody paid any attention to what was going on in there. And as was mentioned, I did my undergraduate thesis on the history of water development in California. And now I am a point person on water for the governor. So it's a message of not just do things that make a difference, but pay attention to them because you might be in charge of them someday. So I'm just here to let you know that we appreciate everything you did. It made a fundamental difference. This is the start of an amazing career for each of you, and I really look forward to your success. And just on behalf of the governor and on behalf of state government, congratulate you on this achievement and just wish you well in every endeavor you undertake going forward.
Now we're going to hand out some certificates. I'm going to grab the one off the top just so I can show you some of the work that the team and Holly did. Some of these are a little bit different because we reached out to the legislators in all of your districts and we said, would you be willing to write a certificate of recognition? Some wrote for all of you, some just wrote for those of you in the district. So you'll be getting a combination of things in here. First and foremost, I want to thank Holly for working hard to get a governor's letter for you, recognizing you for your work and your service. There's, of course, a certificate from the Local Government Commission recognizing you for that work as well. And then in some cases, well, in all cases, there is a legislator's certificate, but there may be more than one, as some legislators were specific and some were more general. So really want to thank you guys. So now we'll go through this process that may or may not physically work very well because we didn't plan out this side of it. But Aldrin's going to keep us straight and go first. So first of all, Aldrin Carrion. Oh, okay. I guess that's how that's going to work. I'll wait till you get over here. Aldrin Carrion. Anna Johnson. Anna Olson. Jason McCrae. And that was our Central Coast team, by the way, and our last Bay Area person. I should mention them by region. So from the Inland Empire team, Susanna Kirshner. Caitlin Rathbun. Michaela Vornas. And Caitlin Ward. From the Los Angeles team, Aaron Brewster. Maya Bruguera. Matthew Goldberg, and Aaron Pressberg. Jumping up north from the North Coast team, Drew Clark, Stephen Luther, and Hannah Nielsen. From right here in Sacramento, Melanie Chu, Ariadna Hernandez, Shelby Kelly, and Emily Potter. From our Central Valley team, we have Jennifer Alvarez, Andrew Kopp, Xenia Montero, Misael Palacios. Somebody had to ham it up. Jesse Rudd, and Tommy Ta. And last but not least, from the Sierras, Criselda Batista. And then we have certificates for our supervisors, so you guys got to come up too. You got to do the same way they did. It was very efficient. You can learn something from young people. So our Bay Area supervisor, Julie Allingham. From the Sierras, Barb DeGraff. Our North Coast Supervisor, Larry Goldberg. Inland Empire, Ken Herron. San Joaquin Valley, Don Pauly. And from Sacramento, Jenny Woods. Thank you all so very much. It has been a pleasure, and I hope all the words that you heard today reinforce for you our belief in you, our faith in you, and our unwavering commitment that you stay in this work for as long as it needs to be done, because it does need it for a long time, and we're all going to be in it with you. So thank you. We're going to adjourn to the room next door for reception, and I encourage everybody who's a guest here to come over. We've got posters from all the members' projects, and you can see the stunning work that they did, and we have snacks. So thank you all very much.